Welcome in to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I am your host, Benjamin Wolk. I'm sitting in what I believe was the Georgia coach's room in the press box during this game. I'm joined, as always, post-game for the Instant Reaction Show by Kipp Adams. And it feels like we're doing the same intro we always do, where we said, what is this Georgia football team? How in the world did it get to the point that it got to in the end of this one? There's a lot of good to take away. There's a lot of bad to take away. I feel like that's been the story of this Georgia season. This one felt a little bit different in that it wasn't like a first half meltdown and then a second half recovery. It felt like there were spots throughout the game where both teams had just taken advantage of certain spots, and it was a roller coaster of a football game, and it was a very fitting final edition of the Jacksonville rivalry for the next couple of years as well. I think that, the fans were very much into it. So we'll get into all of that. Georgia wins 24-20, and I think for a lot of the night, it did not look like it was going to go that way. Kipp, from your vantage point, are you surprised by the end result, or did you think it was always going to kind of end up this way?
Well, the fact that my game prediction was Georgia with a comfortable, I think it was 30-17 win.
You just needed Gunnar Stockton to punch it in there at the end. That's all.
Yeah, there were a lot of texts that went out around that time. I know some, he didn't make any friends in Vegas, but he definitely made a lot of the coaching staff. You could tell it was a lesson learned for him. Don't give the other team the ball at all. That was his number one priority. And I'm sure at the same time, he probably got a little bit of that in his helmet before the play went off. So, and he remembered just in time. But I think we shouldn't be surprised at this point that this is kind of the Georgia football team that you're just going to see all season long. And as far as, as soon as the game started, quick start, Georgia looks great offensively. Like, okay, it looks like Georgia's in control here. And then they proceeded to lose control for, several possessions. There were punts traded back and forth, but at the same time, I think there are situations where one side of the football seems to be performing really well, but we still have yet to see both sides for Georgia, or really, even in this game, special teams as well. All three phases of the game have not come together at the same time. So you start to see some things that, catch you off guard on one side in a good way, but then, the other side just continues to balance it out. So if you want to go glass half full on this, you could say we have yet to see still a complete game from Georgia. But then at this point of the season, you have to wonder, is Georgia capable of a complete game from Georgia? And I think that's kind of the question, even though there's still, again, when you improve to 7-1, when you beat your rival, you should be celebrating all of these things. But looking overall at the season, you still got to wonder, can this Georgia team put it all together when it's going to definitely need to later on in the season?
I think you bring up a great point. It's like, if this Georgia team is the best version of its ceiling on both sides of the ball, it could put a really good game together. If it's at its floor on both sides of the ball for a game, I think it could get really ugly. I mean, there were some things that we talked about during the week that I thought were really notable. But and again, this isn't a pat myself on the back situation, but Florida has turned the ball over a ton this season. And I said all week, I was like, but when Florida doesn't turn the ball over, you're in a much different game against a much different team. And not only did Florida not turn the ball over, Georgia has a very costly turnover early in the game when they're about to pick up a first down, and Noah Thomas drops it and gives Florida a short field. So this was an example to me of, just because a team hasn't played well doesn't mean you are entitled for them to make the same mistakes that they've made against other teams. And again, Florida at its best this season is still a talented, composed team with playmakers all over the place. I mean, they lost Dallas Wilson in the first half. They didn't have Vernell Brown, and they still had Eugene Wilson go out there and make some plays. Jaden Ball is one of the most fluid runners of the football that I feel like we've seen. I mean, he is a special back. So, Kipp, one thing I want to do here, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I want to kind of go through the moments of the game, the good and the bad. And so I want to trade off here. I want to pick a good moment. I want you to pick a good moment. I'll pick a good moment. You pick a good moment. And then we'll do that with the bad side as well. But think of the moments that you feel like really changed the game positively for Georgia. And I'm going to start with one that happened late. It was in the second half. Zachariah Branch. It was the Noah Thomas touchdown that I believe gave Georgia the lead. Right before that, Georgia has a 3rd and long, and Zachariah Branch catches a slant across the middle of the field, takes it, I want to say like 50 yards down the field to set up the Noah Thomas touchdown. I'll talk more about Zachariah Branch later on when we talk about players of the game, because I think it kind of goes without saying, not to spoil the party later on in the episode, but I think it goes without saying who the player of the game was in this one for Georgia, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I thought that stretch, picking up that big 3rd down, and even though Gunnar Stockton underthrew it to Noah Thomas, hitting Noah Thomas there, it didn't solidify the game. Georgia still was trailing, but I think that it gave Georgia a little bit of breathing room early in that second half. Hit me with one. What? Give me a moment of the game.
I mean, I think the fact that when Gunnar Stockton was hitting the backfield right before halftime and the ball came loose.
Oh, yeah.
You thought like it. I mean, it was ruled a fumble. I mean, if we're going to talk about this game overall, like I think the refs made as many plays in this game for both teams as anyone in this game, and that kind of feels like the theme of this Georgia season is that have we ever seen so many plays, big plays in games that were dictated by the referees? Like they've had such a huge presence, back and forth, back and forth. Obviously, both fan bases feel like they're getting the worst of it, but this is huge calls in this game had to be made from the reviews, and we got to hear the on-air announcers watching the game on TV, their opinions of the games, and the fans in the Junkyard were letting them have it for most of the game. It was every single call seemed like it should be going forward his way. This one was reversed to an incomplete pass where it looked like his arm just got forward and he had control of it. And that allowed Georgia to tie the game. I mean, you could make the argument, like you want to get a touchdown there because you feel like Georgia's kind of feeling it at that point. But the fact that, again, that was called an incomplete pass and it allowed them to, to be in field goal range, to go into halftime tied, to give them a chance to regroup. I think that was just a huge play, and the momentum did carry over into the second half because Georgia was able to force a 3-and-out coming out of that second half. So I think that was a chance for Florida to really, gain some momentum there, and Georgia got the call they needed to there and were able to get on the board.
Well, I also want to correct myself because I realized I was conflating 2 different Zachariah big plays, which I think is a testament to the night that he had. I was actually thinking of the 3rd and long when Gunnar Stockton hits Zachariah Branch right before Chauncey Bowen's 36-yard touchdown to set up that go-ahead touchdown. So, again, Zachariah Branch had a big night. I do want to touch on the officiating calls, not because I don't think they did anything wildly wrong and there were some weird plays, but it was just one of those days where their decisions were going to heavily impact the results of the game. And I mean, you mentioned was it a throw? Was it a fumble? I will add this. I mean, the rule, I don't know about you. To me, the ruling is once your arm's moving forward, Gunnar Stockton's got one of the longest releases in human history. And I think everyone's looking at his hand, but it's like he starts that release so early that it's like I think his arm is moving forward well before it slips out. His hand is just kind of borderline, but that has more to do with his release, which is a whole nother thing. I'm curious. I want to know your stance on this one. Early in the game, Georgia tries the snap count. Gunnar Stockton does the typical, clap, whatever. Florida jumps. They run the play. There's a flag thrown for an offsides, but clearly there is another flag thrown for a who knows what at the time. And as it turns out, Gunnar Stockton, as it was called out on the field, and I don't know what they were able to talk about or clear up on the broadcast, that Gunnar Stockton was called for simulating a snap count, which I'm not 100% sure how a quarterback can simulate a snap count when they are the snap count. So maybe you can enlighten me on that. I know Kirby was very peeved on the sideline as that was going on, but I don't know how much cachet he has complaining to refs on the sideline these days after Auburn. I mean, what did you make of that whole situation?
I've never seen a call like that before.
I've never heard of it.
I can't imagine a quarterback getting called for simulating the snap count when they are the field general in charge of snap counts. But at the same time, if you're a defensive lineman, if you're going to call that, then you might as well call it the entire game. And if you're the defense, you might as well just start jumping off sides anytime you see him clap and then blame him for you jumping off sides, because that's basically what you're telling me. You're telling me that he was attempting to draw the defense off sides by clapping his hands. So if we're going in that direction, it's going to change the game of college football. This is a tendency changing play where, again, defensive linemen, people on the edge lined up, just jump off sides and then get the call from the quarter, blame it on the quarterback clapping his hands. So I think, this is going to be another one of those where we don't get the chance to get a pull report from refs. We do in the NFL, we do in other sports, in the NBA. This is where we should make the argument that we deserve that as reporters, as fans of the sport, to know why you made that call, because I don't think anyone at Everbank, anyone watching, understood that when it happened. Still don't understand it. Hopefully Kirby, maybe he can explain it to us if he's asked in his presser, but I think that was a huge call in this game. And I mean, it could have had a game-changing impact in this game. So yeah, that is the one call. Every other call is like the refs having to make a decision on, what's happening to a football. And this one seemed like a non-football call. So you hate that. I mean, like, it's one thing if you see KJ Bolden leading with his helmet, that's a pretty clear call. This situation, it boggles my mind. But there are a lot of things that Georgia had to overcome. You even mentioned with Noah Thomas. I'm going to talk about a game of two halves, a redemption game from Noah Thomas, to where, he doesn't make the catch, and you get a Gunnar Stockton interception. You think this, oh goodness, like Georgia misses Colby Young. This is going to be a long game. Second half, boom, Zachariah Branch makes a big play, and then Noah Thomas, boom, catches that ball in the end zone. He is now, a hero for Georgia, while, Branch is doing the Ben Affleck smoking outside tired meme because he carried this Georgia team offensively in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we're not the type to complain about officials, and I don't even think they did a ton wrong in this game. Like I said, I think there was weird stuff. I think, DJ Lagway diving out for the first down. Did he fumble it? Did he not? It looked like, to me, I'll admit, I thought he's got some big mitts. I know that he started to get it into his fingers, but I truly felt like he had enough control of it until the ball actually made contact with the turf. So I thought they got that one right. I thought they got the Gunnar Stockton overturn correct. I thought that they got the KJ Bolden targeting correct. Like, I think that they got a lot of the game-changing decisions right. I think that there's a obvious question about what the heck was the simulated snap count by the quarterback. Like, what is that? Because that was a game-altering play or decision or situation. And then, of course, one that went Georgia's favor was late. I guess it was Sturdivant. Does Sturdivant catch that pass or not? My feeling on it was it looked like he trapped it on when he caught it live, so it was ruled a no catch on the field. It's really hard to tell, does it touch grass or not? But if that ball touches grass at all because of the way that he caught it before it got to his hands, it's a no catch. So I thought that the upholding was the right way to go on that one. But there's no question there were some big decisions in the game that changed the way this game was going to look. I do want to call out something, Kipp, because Jordan just texted me and they've been down with doing player interviews. And he said that because we already mentioned that Chauncey Bowen's 36-yard run and immediately after the Zachariah Branch 3rd and long pickup, apparently Gunnar Stockton checked and changed the protections prior to that as well and sort of switched up what they were going to be doing pre-snap. And I'll give Chauncey Bowens a lot of credit on that. He redirected on the run, and then he just outran a couple of Florida defensive backs. And I don't know why he wasn't getting many touches early in the game. My only assumption is that he is somewhat hampered and on some kind of snap count or something. But late, I mean, he looked like he was as fresh as he's been all year, and we've said it a bunch earlier in the season, but Chauncey Bowens giving Georgia what he has this year at the running back position has completely changed what they're able to do offensively. All right, we talked about some of the good moments. Are there any other good moments that you want to make sure that we call out?
Well, you mentioned Chauncey Bowens. I mean, that late run by him that kind of put the game away for Georgia, or put them in position to go ahead and run out the clock. The block by Oscar Delp on that play was incredible. And yeah, I think if I want to give credit to your best bowl predictions article of the season, I love the questions. And coming down to the, who's going to have the better game, Jaden Baugh or Chauncey Bowens, it's like we are early touches from Bowens from this, being a no-brainer answer that it's him. He still ends up making it close. So I'm going to touch on your first question, I believe, at the end of in our next segment here. But I think overall, you got to give credit to Georgia's defense when they needed it to. There were a lot of times. I mean, they had to be on the field for a lot of possessions in this game, and I think
I was going to bring up that fourth down stop too. Like that was immediately after the DJ fumble, not fumble. A lot of defenses, you think you get a third down stop like that, you think you might get the ball. You don't. And they've got a 4th and 1 to stop DJ Lagway and Jaden Baugh, who are just mammoth human beings on that 1-yarder. I mean, the defense stepped up when they needed it today, no doubt about it.
I think C.J. Allen made a lot of plays in this game. I think he was asked to do a lot and made a lot of stops. And, yeah, when you're talking about a running back who is breaking a lot of tackles and is making it, very hard for them to bring down, he's basically out there as he's a more explosive Josh McCray, a guy that you just don't want to tackle. Any running back that's able to, make players miss at 230 pounds, that's a monster player. And I think towards the end of the game, once, he's just lathered up, he's got a dozen carries. He and DJ Lagway both are just hard to bring down. You have to make those decisions and you dig within and say, I'm going to go in here. I'm not going to enjoy this, but I am still going to try to bring them down. And they did. They still, at the end of the day, held that duo to under 100 rushing yards, under 4 yards a run. And yeah, there were some breakdowns, but at the same time, I think if you're Kirby Smart and this coaching staff, the fact that you held Florida to 281 yards of offense, that's a win for you.
No doubt about it. And, I think that this Georgia football team just continues to find a way. And it sounds like like I said at the top of the show, it feels like we say the same thing for the first 5 minutes of every Georgia podcast this season, because it's like, what is going on? But then it's like, at a certain point, that's just the identity of this team. They're going to play some tough, hard fought games, and they have the identity to turn it. What I do want to call out, so this, Kipp, but I do my final countdown article at Dogs 24/7. I encourage you to go check it out. I'll write that later tonight after we get done with this and some other things here at the stadium. But I always do the moments that won the game or the moments that lost the game. And so while I'm watching the game, obviously, I'm, tracking what are the moments that I feel like won it. And then if Georgia loses this game, what are the moments that lost it? And what's funny in this one is I have so many more moments that lost this game. Maybe that was just because how it was going at certain points, and I thought that might be the end result. But, I thought early on a couple things happened. One, Florida has that 4th and 1 early at midfield on their first offensive possession. Billy Gonzalez decides to punt. I think the Florida half was booing him for the decision to punt in that spot. That decision to punt turned out to be huge because they force a 3 and out, and the next punt from Brett Thorson goes 24 yards. And Florida's getting the ball on their 40-yard line and hit a one-play shot for a touchdown to Eugene Wilson. Immediately after that, we've already talked about it. Noah Thomas has a first down pickup go off his hands, gets intercepted. Florida gets the ball on the 40 again, ends up settling for a field goal. Florida's got 10 points at that point, which they had at halftime, and they haven't even scored when they've gotten the ball on their own side of the field. So Georgia, this was a Florida team who a Florida team who their starting field position this season was toward the bottom of college football. And when you're giving them short field like that twice in the first half, like, I don't fault the defense much at all for what they did in this game. I mean, Florida had, the one sort of bully ball drive where they had the ball for 7 or 8 minutes and they ran it effectively all the way down. Other than that, I mean, Georgia really won the day outside of the big explosive on the 40-yard one-play touchdown to Eugene Wilson. And then, really, I would say Georgia defensively won the stop after the interception, holding them to a field goal, though I guess Florida did at least get it down into first and goal territory or around thereabouts. So they made it interesting, but Georgia knuckled up. They were never flustered. They made the stop. I give the defense a lot of credit there, but I thought that there were some moments really early in that game that made it look like, I don't want to sit here and say Florida should thank their lucky stars that they were in this game, but I do think, how often are we sitting here saying Brett Thorson has a 24-yard punt on his own side of the field? How often are we talking about a Gunnar Stockton interception, especially a Gunnar Stockton interception where the ball was about to be caught for a first down? Like, these were things that don't typically happen in Georgia games that I thought gave Florida some favorable opportunities. And credit to Florida, they fully took advantage of those opportunities, but they weren't things that I thought Florida was going to be able to sustain, giving themselves short offensive fields for the rest of the game.
Yeah. At the same time, though, this is a Florida team that was without its leading receiver in Vernell Brown.
Fair.
They lose Dallas Wilson. They had a interim head coach. And as you said in your bold predictions piece, DJ Lagway had a clean pocket in this football game and was basically not touched in the backfield. I mean, this was a situation where Georgia's defense failed to, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And this secondary, once again, had pass interference calls. Now, I will say, we're talking about the refs. That one call that gave them first and goal was a little ticky-tacky as far as the defensive holding there. I thought it was strong coverage, but overall, when you have 7 penalties for 65 yards in this game, you're basically handing Florida drive extensions there, and I think that's a situation where, Florida, this game should not have been close. I know that Kirby Smart and everyone's talked about this is still a very talented Florida roster. It's a Florida team that did beat Texas. But, they were down several playmakers in this game. And at this point, we've seen enough to know that the Georgia's pass rush issues still exist. It's pass coverage, especially, your DBs are giving up PI calls in the safety play. I mean, again, there were some coverage breakdowns, especially at the, early on in the game. You had a really bad play with Ja'Cory Thomas, not reacting quickly at all. And then KJ Bolin, while he was still in the game, was not able to catch up, but it didn't look like he was going all out on that play either. They just caught him sleeping right there. Georgia's safety play has been very inconsistent this year. Not something you're used to seeing under Kirby Smart overall in this secondary. And so I do think there are still things where you should be able to clean these things up, but there are some personnel issues that continue to kind of rear their head here and make these games closer than they should be.
Absolutely. We've talked about it a little bit. I want to do some players of the game here, and I know you're doing your game balls, so I don't want to step on your game balls toes too much. So go to Dogs 24/7, subscribe over there because Kipp will have that. We've mentioned Zachariah Branch just for the statistical call out. Without question, his best game, I think, in terms of big moments, but also statistically, 10 catches, 112 yards. Didn't have any touchdowns, but I felt that the moments that he had creating touchdowns for Noah Thomas and for Chauncey Bowens really was the difference maker. He was clearly, we've asked, like, who is Georgia going to go to with Colby Young down on third downs? And look, we've talked about Zachariah Branch, the gadget guy, so to speak, quick twitch, get him the ball in space, make a guy miss, get into open field. And he certainly still does that. And he's going to continue to do that in the screen game, the return game, whatever. What he's doing on contested catches down the field right now is not something that this isn't a short receiver, right? Like, this is a guy that when I'm 5'10" and I look down at him when I'm interviewing him. So this is not a big guy. I don't know what he's listed at, but I'm just calling it like it is. Like, this is not a big guy yet. You look in the Alabama game, he had a big third down pickup. In the Ole Miss game, he had a big third down pickup. And then today against Florida, he gets absolutely rocked in the middle of the field, and Gunner hit a strike to him. And look, he's probably the most sure-handed guy that Georgia's got at this point, and that's just not how I felt Zachariah Branch would be used this season. And look, you're not probably doing that as much if you've got Colby Young, or if you feel that Noah Thomas or some other guys could be a little bit more reliable in those gotta-have-it, gotta-catch-it situations. But man, he was so special today, and I don't know. We're not going to get into what Georgia paid this dude to get him out of the portal, but man, it's worth every penny that Georgia spent to get this guy.
Yeah,
I know you mentioned C.J. Allen. You got anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to say. C.J. Allen made. He looks healthy again. I think that's the big thing. He played very well. Overall, it's tough to hand out a bunch in this, but like we mentioned earlier, like Chauncey Bowens coming in the game, came up with the crucial. Every big crucial run, it seems like, was from Bowens when he came on late in the game. I think it's weird. Like, how do you handle a Noah Thomas tale of two halves there? I think he's got one he'd like to have back, but at the same time, like, that overcoming adversity, the composure card for him. He was there when they needed it, and I think in a game where you win by 4 points, you got to give everybody that kind of scores in this game. It's like they had a huge role in this, and it was just like, it seemed like when he had that touchdown catch in that moment, I think it's one of those that he's probably never going to forget. A lot of first-time guys playing in Jacksonville making big plays. Like Zachariah Branch, this is probably the only time he's ever going to play in Jacksonville, right? So a big game for him. Noah Thomas, first time in Jacksonville, a huge game for him. I think for me, like that Oscar Delp block, another huge play by him. You had a big play by Elias Williams early on in the game. He's starting to emerge as that. I think he's the tight end 3 right now. He's just getting those kind of snaps right now. I think that's going to be his role moving forward. And then another Cash Jones. Oh my, what could have been for him. When you saw that flag, it was like, because he had that big explosive. I was in the first half, and immediately it was like, oh man, that's a hold, isn't it? It's coming back. Because he was getting the early playing time. People were wondering, like, where's Chauncey Bowens? But it seemed like Cash had a big play. It was gonna be one of those game-changing plays, and it got called back for him. But I think overall, most of the love has to go to just Branch and C.J. Allen. They were the biggest players in each side of the game. I think Raylan Wilson was in on some plays, unable to finish a time or two. Like we said, DJ Lagway and Jaden Ballard, not guys that go down easily. That's the bottom line. You got, basically 2 huge fullbacks in there. Florida's rolling out a pair of Tim Tebow's out there in the backfield and making it a nightmare for Georgia defenders. So you needed help. You needed to get up there in waves. But Raylan several times was like the first guy to get there and at least allowed his teammates to get up there and limit the yards, put themselves in manageable third down situations. So I do think he overall had a strong game. And I do think Jordan Hall had been able to play the whole game. He was on his way to a game ball as well. He had a strong start. Tough to see the Jacksonville native go down again.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
And he's just it's been something that, I think that right knee is just flared up time and time again, and I don't think it's a situation. I mean, like, I don't know if he's gonna get the 100%. It's been pretty nagging for him. You want to see him out there. This was a game that he had friends and family at. It's his hometown game, so that was a really, really tough one to see, because I think he was on his way to getting a game ball for sure.
I agree. And when we come back after this break, we will actually talk about some of the injury updates that Kirby Smart gave out when Jordan Hill and Olivia Sayer were down at his press conference. We'll talk about some stats, more of a deep dive during this game. We'll do some scores around the country. And, of course, we'll talk about what's coming up next, because it doesn't get any easier for Georgia after this one. All right, Kipp, before I do injuries, I do want to call out one thing. We talked about the KJ Bolden targeting. We've mentioned Zachariah Branch's name a bunch as well. I do find it interesting that when KJ Bolden went out, which happened just before the end of the first half, so he will be back next week against Mississippi State. But we were having the conversation, like, that's about as brutal of a loss that Georgia probably could have had as an individual player in that game, given that Kyron Jones is out. We didn't even know who was actually going to go in for KJ Bolden in that spot. We're saying, is it going to be one of the young guys? Is it going to be Adrian Maddox? As it turned out, it was Zion Branch. And look, I think he was probably responsible for what was almost the big play to Sturdivant that could have turned into a nightmare. But other than that, I thought that he was pretty sound stepping up and tackling in space. It didn't feel like he was a liability out there, I'll put it that way. So I did at least want to call that out, because I think that you just don't know if, Georgia is one injury away on the back end from being like, what is this going to look like the rest of the way? So on the injury front, there were 3 Georgia players that Kirby Smart's talked about. It is Jordan Hall. I believe it's something to do with his knee. Chris Cole, I believe, is also something to do with his knee. And then DeMello Jones, something to do with his elbow. If you think that I am just giving these weird descriptions of these injuries, I am not. I promise you, I am direct quoting Kirby Smart that it has something to do with their knees and their elbows. I don't believe, Kipp, and correct me if I'm wrong, do we have any knowledge of the extent of anything or severity of it beyond that?
Not right now. I mean, when Kirby Smart asked, it was this is what they have. He is doing his continued operation game references by attempting to point to certain parts of the body. This week, I think he did a little bit better. Last week, he was once again combining parts of the leg. He took the easier route by just saying knees and elbows. So that's it. And I think, I think right now, they probably just don't know how severe, because when you're dealing with knees and elbows, you have to go out there, get some MRIs, get some x-rays, and just see what the severity is. So I think that's a situation where, Monday and Tuesday, we'll have a better idea of, where these things are. But when you see someone go down like Jordan Hall did, first possession, and then immediately ruled out, that's not a great sign. I mean, that was a quick rule out for him. So they may have been playing it safe, but at the same time, when it's he already had an injury on the knee, he's had multiple leg injuries. There may be a combination of playing it safe, and it also didn't look great because he couldn't put weight on it. So I think probably at this point, you just hoping for the best. But with DeMello and I think Chris Cole, that's a situation where, maybe they're back next week. You just don't know the severity right now. We're going to check for updates probably next week and bring that to the latest to Dogs 247.
Absolutely. I did want to shout out Jason Cancel on YouTube. Did point out that Zion Branch had the pass interference right before that last Florida touchdown. I don't know, Kipp, what do you think? You think it was PI?
That was the call where I thought, okay, is it catchable? And at the same time, like, it seemed like it was just like I mean, he's trailing them. Like there's a little bit of like contact, but like I mean,
I don't put that on Zion too much, to be honest with you.
yeah, I'm okay with that, and I think Kirby was okay with it too. And I think overall, like you take that game from Zion Branch every single day. I mean, like he's thrown in there, and I mean, if we're talking about secondary play, I'm not listing Zion Branch and the bottom 2 or 3 guys as far as Georgia. We'll wait and see what those grades look like, in a couple of days. But for the eye test, I thought he performed admirably, didn't thrust into a much bigger role, and it was a question mark. Like whenever KJ Bolden went out, it's like, who is going to be the next safety? So we got a question answered. It's Zion Branch.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, talking about the injured guys that we mentioned, Jordan Hall, I think you felt his absence. He was creating some pressure on the interior. It's a huge bummer for him that he wasn't able to play in most of this game. So just like on a personal level, I mean, he was one of the representatives that Georgia had for media this week. And you see the 2 guys they had were Chauncey Bowens and Jordan Hall. And Chauncey Bowens makes a game-changing, game-winning play. And it was awesome to see for the one-time Florida commit. On the flip side of that, really a bummer for Jordan Hall, though I know the type of guy that he is. He was probably wherever he was, fist pumping all the way through the end of that fourth quarter. DeMello Jones, him and Ellis Robinson again were, sort of passing off job responsibilities. Who was in, who was out. I don't know who I felt had the better game. I know that Ellis Robinson, even though it probably should have been a pick 6, jumped in front of the ball and making that play on 4th down. We haven't seen Georgia DBs make plays on balls very often this season. So just to make a play on the ball, deflection, 4th down stop, I think that Georgia will be fine in some capacity either way. Chris Cole, I will say notably, I don't want to point fingers. One of the plays of the game I felt like negatively for Georgia was DJ Lagway's 2nd and 20 quarterback run, where he picks it up on their end up punching it in for a touchdown. He kind of made walk-on linebacker Terrell Foster look a little silly on that play, but I was surprised to see Terrell Foster in on that play, but I suppose Chris Cole being injured probably contributed to that.
Yeah, that was one where, I mean, he's played a lot. He's kind of been the number 3, number 4 linebacker on the depth chart at both spots, and when you're running up the snap count, that's when he gets more run in a game. So you had Justin Williams in there some. I guess those 2 kind of mix and match a little bit, and I think it's a situation where he does give you solid play, but at the same time, that was exactly like, I just think that was just a huge mismatch for him being in there and being asked to bring down DJ Lagway. It was a tough look for him, but it was a tough matchup to begin with overall.
I'm going to go through a stat rundown. I know we've talked about some of the individual side of things, but I do think getting a picture, I think when you look at the stats picture of this game, you realize that Georgia was probably in a little bit more control of this game than it felt like. And I really do think the 24-yard punt early and the interception, which I don't put on Gunnar Stockton, really changed the complexion of what this game might have looked like. But Georgia has 361 yards of total offense to Florida's 281. I think anybody would have taken 281 from Florida coming into the game. That was only 166 passing and 115 rushing. I mean, Georgia wins the passing battle 223 to 166, wins the rushing battle 138 to 115. I mean, honestly, it wasn't like a resoundingly dominant performance moving the football, but I felt like Georgia controlled that side of things. I think probably the stat of the game for me, Georgia was 7 of 15 on 3rd downs. Florida was 2 of 13 on 3rd and 4th downs. Of course, 2 big 4th down stops there in the 4th quarter, I think really saved Georgia in this one. I mean, this is a much different game if Georgia doesn't make that 4th down stop when they're down 20 to 17. Georgia did fire off 12 more plays than Florida in this one. For much of this game, Georgia had the ball. Like at halftime, I think Georgia had the ball for like 21 minutes to Florida's 9 or somewhere around there. By the end of the game, in large part because of that long kind of pound the rock touchdown drive from Florida. They leveled it up a little bit. Georgia only had the ball for 5 more minutes than Florida did. But I keep going back to this stat, Kipp. Georgia turns it over once. Florida turns it over 0 times. If you're playing a talented football team that doesn't make any mistakes and you give up at least one possession, it's going to be – I mean, Georgia was a walk-in Gunnar Stockton touchdown away from winning by 11, but when you turn it over, you're going to be in these ugly dogfight type of games. That's just the way it is. And I know Georgia didn't turn it over a lot, but when you just turn it over more than the opponent does, which it feels like happens every single week at this point, or at least tie the turnover battle every single week, it makes it really, really hard. So from a team standpoint, what do you think was the story of the game, those 3rd and 4th downs?
I think it definitely – I mean, they started out – the defense started out like they had 6 stops in a row on 3rd down against Florida. So it was not like, that overall that they, I think they performed pretty strongly in that area. And then 2 4th down stops. So if you go 2 for 13 defensively on 3rd and 4th down, I think Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, you got to love that. And I mean, offensively, 7 for 15, that's a solid day as well. And that's the difference in the game where you lose the turnover battle. You have to kind of dink and dunk your way into, winning every single possession. And again, this was also a day, I mean, like, what's Brett Thorson, has he had 6 punts in a game? I don't know.
That's the average on Brett Thorson was weird when he had a 24-yarder and then a 66-yarder down at the 9.
Yeah, he ultimately ends up with just a very even 43 yards per punt. And they actually, special teams, Georgia overall lost the special teams battle today.
For sure.
I mean, Florida outstanding, almost 48 yards a punt. They had a 65-yarder in that game. And as you mentioned, Brett's got the 66-yarder, but also he gave up some yards in the return game as well. Jaden Ball had a solid kick return.
Return to the 38, I think, and then they had a 54-yard kick too. So
Zachariah Branch has been fine, but they haven't had an explosive in the return game all season, and that was something we talked about going into the year. Like, we thought Branch would, break one for a score, if not multiple scores. Haven't seen that yet from Georgia in the return game, so they didn't really hold serve in that regard. But overall, defensively on 3rd down and offensively on 3rd down, that's how you overcome the margins there. When you have a unfortunate turnover early, you gotta at some point start impacting opponents. I mean, you gotta make them uncomfortable, and that is the part of this Georgia defense that you have not seen this season. Whether it's your defensive line, you were using your linebackers early to create pressure. Your secondary is not performing up to your standards, but I think it's is it a trickle down effect from you're just not making an impact, and you're not having those turnovers when you need to. You're making crucial stops, but man, a turnover or 2 in this game, and it's Georgia's probably winning by 10 to 13 points easily in this game. I mean, they could have technically won this game by 11. So if we're talking about covering and things like that, I get it, but that's the play Gunnar Stockton has to make. And then we're talking about a technically closer game in the end. But I just think this game would have been, much closer to comfortable and blowout city if Georgia's able to kind of make explosive plays on defense. And we're still not sure if they have the roster for that.
Yeah, you're right. Individually, Gunnar Stockton, 20-29 for 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll say this. I asked Jordan at the end of the 4th quarter, how many passing yards do you think that Gunnar Stockton has? And we were both 160, 170 something. You look up, it's 223, 2 touchdowns. I mean, I know he has the pick, but I don't put that one on him. Probably would have been a sustained first down, sustained a drive after that. I mean, Gunnar Stockton was more than good enough yet again, even on a day when he probably wasn't the best version of himself and missed some stuff. Chauncey Bowens, we mentioned him. He averaged 7.8 yards per carry. He only touched the ball 9 times, but has 70 yards and the 36-yard game-winning touchdown. Nate Frazier had 12 carries for 45 yards. Receiving, we already mentioned Zachariah Branch, and then Dylan Bell, 4 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. I feel like Zachariah Branch, Dylan Bell, Noah Thomas, maybe a little bit of London Humphreys. That's what you can expect the wide receiver rotation to look like down the stretch without Colby Young. We did see a little bit more of Elias Williams, and I've been told that I should expect to be seeing more and more of Elias Williams over these last few games of the season as well. So there's certainly some individual opportunities there on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, you mentioned it. I mean, I don't think there's many individual performances in this game that are worth calling out if we're just being real about it. I think that as a team, as a unit, they got stops when they needed to get stops, but I don't think anybody individually just dominated the game other than CJ Allen. I mean, he has 13 tackles, 7 solo. He hurries DJ Lagway. He only got credited for 1 quarterback hurry. I feel like he hurried him twice, just making DJ at least work for it a little bit there as well, pushing him out of the pocket. So, those are the big individual performances. You also mentioned Zachariah Branch hasn't had an explosive return of sorts, or we haven't seen that out of him. Honestly, probably his best return moment of the season so far was getting hit after that fair catch. The Florida player thought he did like a little skip, but I mean, getting those free 15, I don't even remember what the drive was after that. But to your point, like we just haven't seen much positive happen. I mean, he's not doing anything negative either, and that's an important part of that job. But yeah, we just haven't seen a whole lot there. But I think when you have 10 catches for 112 yards and you change the game, I think everybody will give you a pass on that. All right, Kipp, we're going to do some scores. All right. And then we're going to talk about what's next for Georgia, which it's about to get interesting to say the least. So just going through some of the top 25, and we're doing this live show at 8:35 Eastern time, so there's certainly still some games going on. Tennessee's up 3 on Oklahoma, Georgia Tech's up 3 on NC State, Nebraska's leading USC, Michigan's up a touchdown at half, Ole Miss is up 10 at half, but games that have already been completed by the time that we're doing this. Ohio State 38-14 over Penn State. It was kind of close at halftime a little bit, but Ohio State is who Ohio State is. Indiana dominates again 55-10 over Maryland. Maybe the game of the day if Florida wasn't the game of the day, which it feels like Georgia's playing the game of the day every week at this point. But Texas wins 34-31 over Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt made it tight there at the end. And I think that this one really comes into focus for Georgia now because Texas is 2 weeks away and they're playing pretty good football, but people still aren't totally sure about them. You probably watched more of that one than I did. What do you think?
I think that Texas controlled this game. Yeah. I mean, Vanderbilt it was like a late rally. But this is what we talked about in the last pod. I was saying like that this Texas team still has everything to play for. They're not out. And sometimes if you're backed into the corner, you start to, show your best self. And I think that's what Arch Manning's kind of been doing. The very first play from scrimmage was swing past Ryan Wingo and 75-yard touchdown. He made multiple guys miss. And we came into, this season talking about Ohio State having maybe the 2 best playmakers in the country. Jeremiah Smith is still a monster. Ohio State's still sleepwalking through their season. But Ryan Wingo is like right up there for me. Yep. I just think that he is a guy that is a nightmare in open space and he looked incredible against Vanderbilt. The run game wasn't dominant, but it was effective. Quintrevion Wisner broke some tackles, got extra yards. And I think the offensive line, the key for me was the Texas offensive line has really been, detrimental to the Longhorns offense all season. It's why everyone has jumped off that Arch Manning bandwagon. Well, guess what? Now that it's too late for you to buy the Arch stock now because he just saw his best protection all season long. And he looked outstanding out there. He looked comfortable, and he started making throws that I think a few quarterbacks in the country can make. I thought he looked outstanding out there. When you throw for over 303 touchdowns, I guess it's not exactly hard-hitting analysis. But at the same time, like the Vandy was the story. I mean, they basically got a coach knocked out. I mean, like, they had the game day there and the big win over LSU. They were still kind of the talk of the SEC this season. And I thought Texas just smacked them around for most of the game, and Vanderbilt, couldn't get anything going offensively either. Their run game was not there at all. Texas pass rush just basically just shut down Diego Pavia, and it kind of ended that overall storyline. So I thought it was way more dominating than what the score showed. And then on the flip side, I'll just bring it up. I watched the wheels come off that Miami.
I was going to save that for the end, Kipp. I was going to save that for the end of the score.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll end this by saying, yeah, that Texas Georgia game is shaping up. I mean, like, we're going to get that kickoff time on Monday.
7:30. Let's call it right now.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead at this point. I think that's going to be a night game, and then what looks like it doesn't look like a playoff elimination game for both teams, but it's definitely teams trying to stay alive in the hunt. And I think it's going to be one of the best games of the year.
Going through a few others, number 12 Notre Dame as a 28.5-point favorite only scores 25 points, wins 25-10 against Boston College. I'm sure it wasn't an interesting game, but a little bit of a surprise score for me how close that one was. Texas Tech bounces back with a 43-20 win over Kansas State. Virginia wins 31-21 on the road all the way across the country at California. Louisville wins 28-16 over Virginia Tech. West Virginia, I imagine that was an upset, though I don't know what the line was at, but beats number 22, Houston, 45-35. And then the one that Kipp alluded to, and hand up, I said Carson Beck at Miami was going to work. I don't want to write them off. I don't want to say they're entirely dead. But sitting there with 2 losses to SMU and Louisville, I think it's going to be really tough. And I think they did Carson Beck the favor of not putting his interception in overtime up on the Jumbotron. But for much of the pregame, that was the game that was playing on the TV. And I kept saying, I was like, if Miami finds a way to lose this game, the Georgia and Florida fans joining together, the community that will be created watching Miami lose a game that they shouldn't lose, and Carson Beck throwing a pick in overtime to cause it. They didn't show it up there, but had they, I think that it would have been one of the loudest you've ever heard Everbank Field, because I think both halves would have been equally celebrating that moment. But yeah, it's tough. If you're Mario Cristobal right now, if you're Carson Beck right now, I'm not sure there's a tougher loss to stomach than that one. And I will say it was the first time they had to leave the state of Florida all season, and they lose in overtime 26-20 to SMU.
I mean, again, without even looking at the box score, someone says Miami lost. Like, you could probably guess what happened in this football game. You could probably write a non-AI assisted recap of what you think happened in this game. That's exactly what happened in this game. Like, Mario Cristobal teams can't get out of their own way. It's just, that's the way it is. And then you bring in Carson Beck, who we talk about DJ Lagway not having any turnovers today, but now we have Carson Beck with 9 interceptions, I think, on the year now. He had 2 in this game. So it's a situation where he had 2 turnovers, but then, like I said, with Mario Cristobal, his team had 12 penalties for basically 100 yards. And I talked about penalties hurting Georgia in this game. It's just self-inflicted. They are a self-inflicted football team, and you can't overcome that. I mean, like, you just saw Louisville beat them when Carson Beck had 4 picks. He has 2 in this game. This was my upset pick of the week because I saw Miami's schedule and was like, they've played 7 football games and they haven't left the state of Florida yet. It was crazy to look at. So you're going to SMU, you're going to have George W. Bush down there, you're going to have Shooter McGavin down there. It's a different environment. And at the end, you saw fans in cowboy boots. They were decked out. They brought that goalpost down because they had the better quarterback play. Kevin Jennings was outstanding in this football game. Threw for 365 yards, Had a score, did not throw any picks in this game, but he was the better football player in this game. He had the better passing attack, even though you and I mean, like, we can't give more effusive praise than we give to Malachi Toney. Even at 9 catches for 70 yards, we can say you didn't give him the football enough. Like, that's a guy that got double-digit touches in every game, and he's the best freshman in football. But now we're talking about a Miami team that's on the outside looking in, and it is a disappointing season for the Hurricanes.
Well, Kipp, you just saw this, or anybody watching on YouTube saw this, but I'm getting basically escorted out of where I was previously. So I'm going to wrap this thing up quick here on Georgia's 24-20 win over Florida in Jacksonville. I will say this, for this being the last Jacksonville version of this until 2029, I think everybody has to be happy about how – I know Florida fans aren't happy about the result, but just the fact that it was a great football game that could have gone either way for a lot of it. I think Jacksonville deserved that, just given the fact that it's not going to be back there for a few years. I will call out, just as we were doing scores, Mississippi State does get its first SEC win in 2 years over Arkansas, 38-35. And honestly, I think Georgia should be feeling good about that, because it's a team that has been on the brink for a few weeks now. And this is not a bad football team. I think it should be said. This is a team that took Florida to the wire. This is a team that took Texas to the wire. And this is a team that now has an SEC win, against a road win, I might add, against Arkansas. Not going to be an easy one. This is the definition of trap game. You just had a heartfelt win against a big rival. In 2 weeks, you've got a game that if you win against Mississippi State and you win against Texas, I kind of think no matter what happens against Georgia Tech, they're going to find a way to squeeze Georgia in there, assuming that Georgia Tech's 11-0 going into that game. So these next two are big, but I think that this next one on the road with the Cowbells in Starkville, I just think that Georgia has to find a way to get up for this one, because I think it's going to be underratedly one of the more important games of the season for Georgia. What do you think, Kipp?
2 track stars in Anthony Evans, Georgia fans know, former Georgia receiver, and Brennan Thompson, former Texas receiver. We're talking about track meet with those 2 guys. And they both had 100 yards in that win over Arkansas. That is going to be the storyline in this football game, is the fact that those guys are going to be hell to deal with. And we've been talking about Georgia secondary. Your safeties are going to have to help out. Ellis, Everett, DeMello Jones, if he's out there, they're going to be tested. And I think that is going to be the matchup of this football game. Can you contain 2 guys who can outrun basically every DB in the country?
All right, y'all. I appreciate everybody who watched or listened on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter live. We appreciate you. If you're listening after the fact on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we appreciate you as well. Please subscribe, like, everything like that. We really appreciate you there. Jordan, Kipp, and I will be back with you on Tuesday, I would guess. So we'll be talking about that Mississippi State game. Might have some more injury updates. There are some recruiting things to talk about as well. But for Kipp Adams, I'm Benjamin Wolk. Georgia wins 24-20 in Jacksonville, and we will see you next time.